So I want to start by thanking you guys for your time. Obviously, this is very valuable time, and we're really happy to show you guys this organization that we love so much. So to start, we actually are, to cover what we are fully, Bearbotics is actually multiple robotics teams. We have teams in elementary school levels, which is Lego robots, and we have teams that are first technical challenge teams, or FTC teams, which are these robots here. Alex will cover more on that later. And we also have our FRC team, which is our biggest and I would argue most impressive robots. Every year we are given a new game and a new challenge. So we can't just keep the same robot. We have to redesign and innovate each year. But to start, I'm going to give the microphone to Alex to talk about FTC a little bit.
Hello, I'm Alex, and I'm going to be one of the three team leads of our three first technical challenger FEC teams. I'm going to be team lead of team 19541 or Bearbotics Alpha. Last year it was called Bearbotics Ragnarok, and we were a completely different team, which means we had team members that have been in the robotics group for between 1 and 3 years, and we ended up making it to state last year, the state championship, and we got 4th place out of 36 teams. And we also got the Connect, the Motivate, and the Inspire award. And then we also had 2 other teams, Bearbotics Sigma, which is 20771. They ended up getting the Design Award, and 19970, which is Bearbotics Theta, they ended up getting the Motivate Award. We also held our Gobble Squabble, which ended up being the big scrimmage in the region. A scrimmage is a friendly competition between all the different teams that come to see where the robotics performance is at. We also held our first regional competition at Bear Creek Elementary School, which ended up being 12 teams that participated. Next season, we are going to end up going into a different game which involves water. It is called Dive into the Deep, and since robots and water don't exactly mix, we are going to be extending our reach into 8th graders. And so we already ended up training them with our spring training that we held during the month of March and April every Wednesday. And we are also going to split against 3 different teams with veterans running each team. Thank you also so much for helping us with getting as many grants as possible to get some new equipment, which one of them involves a laser engraver that we are using for prototyping and testing. And I'm going to hand it over to Daniel, and he's going to talk about more First Robotics Challenge.
So First Robotics Challenge, or FRC as I'm going to call it from this point on, is the big robot you see here. This might look like an incredibly complicated piece of machinery, and that's because it is. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And this robot saw a lot of success. It taught us a lot of things. And what this success means to us is it's a variety of different things. One of these things is the student experience that we're giving to members of our team. As you can see up here, we have a lot of different leadership opportunities for our team. Each blue column here is a different sub-team, as we call it, or aspect of the robot. We have people who need to work on the mechanical side, or the programming, or electrical. Each of these people specialize in those skills so that they can gain real-life experience that they're going to use in their future careers. We have 19 different leadership opportunities right now. That's huge. For no matter what industry you're going into, you're going to see these skills we're developing here apply. And it's not only leadership skills that we're developing here, we're also getting hands-on engineering experience. You can see students are working on things from as simple as our drivetrain all the way to complicated electronics. These skills are unlike any other skills you can get in the district. They're incredibly useful, and a lot of the things we do are going to apply in our future careers. Our graduating seniors this year, which was 11 of them, 10 of them are going into engineering in college this upcoming year, and all of them are going into STEM fields. This is huge because we can see how this organization is directly impacting students' future. And it's not only this hands-on engineering experience that we're seeing students develop, but it's also a lot of technical skills. So the engineers here are going to really enjoy this next part, but for the rest of you, just smile and nod like you understand what I'm saying. So one skill that personally I'm getting to learn here is our design and fabrication. As you can see in these images above, each part of this robot has to be designed in a 3D workspace. That means that we're getting engineering experience designing things from our manipulator and shooter to our arm. It's great experience, and once we design these parts in the 3D workspace, we then take them and we have to teach our fabrication machines exactly how to make them. We have to go toolpath by toolpath, line by line, so that our machines can fabricate them. And as you can see in this picture here, we fabricate a majority of our parts with a CNC router. Basically, for those of you who are lost up until this point, this is a big machine that can cut metal, plastics, polycarbonate, parts like that. And this helps us design a robot like this. This machine was paid for by 2 years of fundraising, and it has been a huge aspect of our team. Our team is funded for, with the exception of the space that we are very grateful to have, our team is funded for entirely by our own sponsors, our own sponsorships, grants, and donations. Some of our sponsors you can see here on the front of our robot. Sorry. This CNC machine gave us the ability to perform on the field like we've never seen before. We are very much so a competition. We have competitions in multiple states that we travel to, and we saw a lot of success this year. In fact, at our Utah competition, we were first out of 46 at the end of the competition, and this CNC machine allowed us to fabricate our robot even faster than ever before, so that we had the time to practice, so that we could be that successful. It's not only technical skills like designing and fabricating that students are gaining, but it's also applicable skills like programming and math. So this robot here is programmed entirely in Java. Java is a language of programming that is used in the industry a lot. It's very applicable in today's society. And these skills that students are gaining are going to apply to them in any programming career that they go into in the future. As you can see here, one of our programmers, Mason Paczynski, used linear algebra in order to make this robot here be able to score our scoring elements in the field in different locations. And it helped get the angle and RPM necessary. This is math that it's beyond me, and it's incredibly complicated. These are opportunities that Mason couldn't get anywhere else. And now if we can cue up the video that we have provided. So this video is of one of our competition matches. I will point out where we are in the field once again. Yeah, here we are. So we are right here, team 4068. So as this competition starts, this first portion is the autonomous portion. So this means that our drivers aren't touching the controllers at all. This is just the robot doing what it knows how to do. We've programmed it ahead of time, and we've taught it exactly what it needs to do so that we can perform. As you can see, we're doing great. At this point in time, the drivers pick up the controllers, and now it is a scramble. So you might be a little bit confused, but because there's 6 robots on the field, but each match is a 3 robot versus 3 robot game. We don't know who we're going to be with, what strategy we're going to have to play. This is all things that we have to figure out on the fly as we go through this competition. So our robot here we're picking up these orange rings. We call them notes. That's the name they were given this year. We have to pick them up and shoot them in various scoring locations, and we were able to do this really successfully this year. A lot of the success we saw in the field was in thanks to our programming team. Our programmers were great because they gave our robot so many smarts. As you can see, our robot can pick up these orange rings with with incredible ease, and our driver is communicated to with LEDs on what he needs to do and where he needs to go. As you can see, we're picking up an orange ring now here in the bottom. There we go. Our driver has to look all the way across this large field. It's about the size of a basketball court, and so it can be difficult to see. And this is why our programmers are great and that they've given us so many capabilities there. Our programmers have also set it up so that with the simple push of a button, the robot knows where it is, how far it has to lift up the arm, and spin the wheels in order to score. And as you can see here, we're scoring really well, and this is in combination to several things, our robot and our programming, as we've talked about before, but also the strategy that we've put behind it. We spend a lot of time making sure we understand the game, we know the rules. At this point, a lot of robots are starting to climb these chains in the middle. This is another challenge of the game, is that we have to climb these chains in order to score more points. This was a particularly successful climb. If you look down here on the bottom screen, we climbed with another robot on one chain, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do. So now that we've hit the end of the match, you can see that score, and it's apparent how much effort we put into this, because that scores like this don't happen by accident. And if you notice here, our team, 4068, is first out of 46 robots, and this was at the end of our qualification matches, which was an achievement that Bearbotics has never seen in the past. It was very big for us. And if we can jump back to the slides. So what's really amazing is when you look at that success we had and you also compare some of our limiting factors that we currently have in place right now. So right now, as the team is growing, while we are grateful for the space we have, it's much better than when we were running out of the back room of a cafeteria several years ago. We do have some limiting factors in space. As you can see in this photo here, we have multiple teams working on top of each other. We have our electrical team wiring up the robot. At the same time, we have students working on the lathe. While we clearly have to have mentors and adults always present to make sure that everything is safe and that we are running the best in the most optimized way possible. This isn't an ideal solution. We don't want people working on top of each other for safety reasons and because we want to get more students to have a hands-on experience with the robot. In addition to our shop being somewhat tight in space, we also have our practice field. As you saw in the video, it's a big field we have to play on. This practice field is only half of the field. Our drivers never actually get to see the full field until they are too close to competition to get real practice in. It's comparable to having a football team practice on a basketball court and then tell them to go win games. You just don't see it happen very often. And this is why our success in last competition was so amazing and even surprising, some would say. This practice room doesn't only serve as a practice room, it's also a design room, it's also a programming room, it's a meeting room. It has to serve multiple functions because we only have so much space. And now to talk about our partnering 501c3 nonprofit, Mighty, is Alex again.
So Monumental Impact is a nonprofit that helps us with a ton of fundraising for robotics. We range from anything to summer camps, escape room. We did an AI art exhibit last year at the Mining Museum. We ended up selling paintings for fun. We ended up selling images for fundraising. We also tour spaces. Like in the middle, we toured a NovaFlex that is 3 students with 2 mentors. And then up in the top corner, there is an example of one of our booths for the 4th of July. We end up selling spots for our summer camp, spots for the escape room, and so much more, as well as 3D designed and printed fidget toys and stuffed animals with t-shirts on them, which are really cute. And we ended up impacting the community and telling them about us in so many different ways due to our ability to fundraise with Monumental Impact. And now I'm going to hand it over to Daniel for final comments.
Again, I just want to say thank you so much for this time. This is an incredibly important organization to us, and we spend so much time working on these robots and everything in between. It's huge to us that we get to talk about this, because sometimes we get caught up in our own little world, but it really is such an amazing competition. And with that, I will turn the time back over to you guys.
Okay, and if I may, just to round this out, you guys heard so much just now. You heard about FLL and FTC and FRC and monumental impact. Something that wasn't stated and cannot go understated is the fact that this is all run by volunteers, right? Like there are maybe 40 volunteers that make this whole thing run. And so of the volunteers, we have a head coach named Coach Hinkle, who's retiring this year. And he's retiring after 22 years in robotics, but also specifically, I have some statistics here. Thank you, Coach Middleton. Coach Hinkle has had 6 seasons with robotics, 155 matches played, 98 wins, 9 regional competition appearances. Of those, 1 first place winner, 3-time regional finalists, 3-time regional semifinalists. And then last but not least, I will say, the awards that he has helped this team and lead them to is Excellence in Engineering, Industrial Design, Dean's List finalist, and the Gracious Professionalism. So we can't let this meeting conclude without us at least expressing our gratitude. We learned that they travel out of state, right? Those robots need to be driven because they can't fly. I mean, it is a level of commitment from our volunteers and mentors beyond anything I've seen before. So we just want to honor and thank Coach Hinkle and welcome on Coach Middleton and Coach Vandenhoek, who's coming in. So if you can join me in a round of applause for these.
Thank you, Coach Hinkle, and also congratulations to Coach Matt Middleton for stepping in as head coach, and Coach Mr. Eric Vandenhoek for our assistant coach. And I have a question. How many students are on the team?
Well, we're getting new ones every day, so right now we're pushing around 25 for FRC. I'm not sure where it is.
We had 95 in the whole program last year. That's all the way from the FLL through high school.
95 total students in the entire program.
We're hoping for more this year.
We're going to get more.
Yes.
Thank you so very much, and congratulations to all of you. And I do know that it's no small feat in the amount of hours that each student and volunteer dedicates to the robots as well. So it doesn't go unnoticed. And congratulations. But wait, there's more. We also have some staff and student recognition from Bear Creek Elementary School. And at this time, I would like to invite our Bear Creek Elementary School principal, Mr. Donnell Potter, who's going to introduce one of our science teachers and her students.
Good evening, board. So I get the distinct pleasure tonight to introduce one of our staff members and some of our students who recently were part of the Pikes Peak Regional Science and Engineering Fair. And that, Mrs. DeLello here in a second will introduce the students and their accomplishments, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Mrs. DeLello before we introduced her. So Mrs. DeLello is our 6th grade science teacher at Bear Creek, and she also is our STEM committee chairperson, and she organizes our STEM night, which is a big event at Bear Creek. It's one of our biggest events of the school year, and part of that event is our school science fair. And Ms. DeLello helps organize getting volunteers and getting all of our students with science fair projects into the school and getting them judged and then moving them on. So she puts in a lot of effort to this event. It is, like I said, one of our biggest events, and we can't say how appreciative enough we are of Mrs. DeLello's efforts in doing that. So without further ado, I will introduce Mrs. DeLello and let her tell you about the accomplishments of these fine young people standing right here, and then some others that we had from the Pikes Peak Regional Science and Engineering Fair. Would you like to sit or do you want to stand? Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us here and letting us recognize these gentlemen and some ladies that are not able to come tonight. Pikes Peak Regional Science Engineering Fair opens their doors for sixth graders, and it is, I think, a vital part of just getting them inspired and excited about science. And when I came 6 years ago, I didn't know anything about it, but I started looking into it, and somebody had mentioned, actually I think Molly Ketchell had mentioned about science fair to me. In fact, she said, by the way, Val, did you know that you're here, that you're in charge of the science fair here at Bear Creek Elementary? And I said, that's funny, they didn't mention that in the interview. What is that about? And then this year when Mr. Potter came aboard, he said, Val, just one question for you. Did you ever mean it to get so big? And I said, absolutely not. But it has just inspired a lot of students. And I thought, well, we have a school one. There must be, because I knew about the International Science Fair that is nationwide. There must be a regional one. So that is the Pikes Peak Regional Science Engineering Fair. And you have invited our students before, and I couldn't let this year end without recognizing the 9 students that were there at Pikes Peak. It was held at UCCS this year, and I'm just so proud of their efforts. It is voluntary. They only have to do the school one, but 9 of the students this year said, well, I want to do the regional one. Can you give us the paperwork, which is very extensive. And thank you for the parents that put up with all my emails for the paperwork. But let me introduce you to 3 of the 9, Ben Bloomfield, Aiden Light, and Justin Beasley. We also had, get my glasses on, Annalyn Denson. She is on her way to move to Germany. Michael Makovsky, and he's on vacation already. Ben Knopf, Anastasia Palmieri, Carter Briscoe, and Andy Avalos. And they are just a fun, dedicated group of students. All of them received special awards. Ben Bloomfield and Ben Knopf were invited. They got second place at the Pikes Peak for the 6th through 8th grade in their category. And they got invited to the Colorado State Engineering Fair, which is quite an honor. And both Ben Knopf was able to go, and he just, every year, I'm amazed at the ideas and the dedication and hard work that these 6th graders are willing to give up of their time and their effort, and all of our chaotic paperwork and going back and forth for months. It takes several months to just get prepared and ready for the regional fair in February. And then we just are so proud of all their work. So, and thank you again to the parents that supported it. It took a lot of hours and a lot of dedication. They go through, when they held it, they go through 3 hours of judging in the morning. They get a lunch break, and then they have 3 hours of judging in the afternoon. And it's not like the Bear Creek Science Fair where we have one judge, for a student, but it is I think it's just, as you saw in the robotics club here, that science and engineering start at a very young age. And as long as I have students that are interested, like these gentlemen, we're going to just keep on opening it up to them. And last year there was 0 interested, so it goes year by year. But I just wanted to honor them and say thank you for all their hard efforts and all the work that they've done this year. So thank you, boys. I know you have a quick agenda, but let me just, I don't want to put them on the spot, but they can just tell real quick what was their title or what they tested in order to go in the Pikes Peak Regional Science Fair.
So I tested how variation in temperature affects crystal growth, and so this took about a couple days to experiment, and then I put my whole board together. So yeah, it was a good opportunity, I think.
I did this project where I was seeing if drones picking up trash would be more efficient than garbage trucks, and I got surprising results.
I tested where, excuse me. Oh, yeah. I engineered a fan, a voice-activated fan, using Arduino and other parts, and it took a while to get the code right, but I eventually did it.
Excellent.
Thank you. As you see these gentlemen here and the ladies that were all participants, all 9 of them, we just had continuation on Friday morning, and my team members and I we were absolutely sad because it's just a great group of kids, but proud of their efforts, so we have to say goodbye. We tried to flunk them, that didn't work, but they're moving on to 7th grade, and I know that they have bright futures ahead of them, so thank you very much.
We'll take a quick picture, and congratulations to all of you. Congratulations. Congratulations. And Mr. Potter, do you want to get in the picture too, please?
All right, but wait, there's more. We have another recognition that our acting superintendent, Amber Wetstein, would like to introduce the Lewis Palmer High School principal, Bridget O'Connor. Is Bridget here?
And actually, it's going to be Miss Molly Ketchell and Miss Stacy Roshek, if she's here, who are going to come up and recognize some fantastic tutors at Lewis Palmer High School.
Thank you, everyone, for allowing us to be here. We would like to recognize the members of the community that have dedicated their time to assist Lewis Palmer High School students during this past school year. Oh, come on up. One of our study hall teachers, Sazan Satari, he reached out to Steve Eaton at Monument Math Tutors to see if there would be a way for our math department to collaborate with this community resource. And they immediately engaged and began providing math tutoring primarily for students in our freshman Algebra 1 classes. However, by second semester, we were able to add students from Geometry and Algebra 2 as well. Our outstanding community members, Mary Kohler, Tom Kohler, Larry Bryant, Tony Sagambini, and Dave Cantwell began scheduling regular appointments to meet with students and assist with their math skills during the school day. The tutors dedicated over 400 hours of their time, and we have measurable examples of their success. We've seen improvements in students' math grades anywhere from 8 to 50%, and students that have not been engaged in math previously have begun to do so because of you guys. We've also seen high achievers stretch their capacity. Our community tuners have given their time on behalf of all of us, and they have improved the math capabilities of our students, all while asking for nothing in return. Lewis Palmer High School and the Lewis Palmer School Board would like to recognize and formally thank each of you for your time, dedication, and support of our students. Thank you very much, guys.
And I can attest from my own students' experience how important that tutoring is and the services that you provide. So thank you so much. To not just the service, it's community work too. So thank you so very, very much. And then our last staff recognition, and we've already heard from her once today. Again, Amber Wetstein will introduce Jessica McAllister, our D38 Secondary Program Coordinator, for a very special recognition and congratulations.
Yes, so
Jess, where are you? There you are.
It's my honor this evening to recognize our very own Miss Jess McAllister. She has recently been recognized by U Science, a leading technology provider dedicated to solving the skills gap crisis for students and employers. Recently, they announced Ms. McAllister as one of 5 nationwide recipients of the esteemed U Science Innovative Educator Award. This award celebrates educators who have implemented innovative approaches to empower the next generation of professionals through academic and career exploration. In their press release, they said, Jessica McAllister, the Secondary Programs Coordinator at Lewis Palmer School District 38, has been lauded for her entrepreneurial leadership and forward-thinking approach. With over 23 years working in education, McAllister has spearheaded innovative practices, including the implementation of U Science, to support students in finding their passions and preparing for future careers. Under her leadership, the district, encompassing 3 district-operated secondary schools, has embraced innovative programs to elevate career and college readiness, work-based learning opportunities, and community partners. So it is my distinct honor to get to present Ms. McAllister with her award.
Okay. Oh, I know the flowers. Okay, moving on to our next item, B5, public comment. Didn't see that.
Yeah, I forgot to mention something in that slide. Can I just really quick?
Sure.
Okay. So one of the things I feel I didn't mention when I was speaking out, Mrs. Alello, in the slide earlier, and you can see it right there, she actually won a very prestigious award as well this year. She was the only teacher actually to win the award, and it was from the Colorado Association of Science Teachers, and she was nominated by a member of the community. And was put through this fairly rigorous process from all teachers in the state of Colorado, and won. And she was able in March to go to the Colorado Denver Museum of Nature and Science and go to a reception, and it's a very, very prestigious award. I failed to mention that, so I apologize. Val, come here.
Thank you so much. Ms. Palello, congratulations.
Congratulations.
I'm curious, do we normally follow the meeting minutes, the agenda minutes?
Sir.
We're going to continue on with these. Okay. Let's follow the agenda minutes next time, okay? All right. It's not important.
Our next item is B5, public comments.
You want to ask if there are anyone signed up?
Are there is anyone that signed up for public comment?
Okay.
We have one member that is signed up.
Okay, so
Yes.
at this time, in accordance with policy BEDH, the board will hear comments from members of the public who have signed up to speak. It is our goal as a board to continuously listen and improve, and we invite members of our community to speak publicly for a total of 30 minutes. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes each, and time may be divided equally if more than 10 individuals wish to speak. Groups with united concern may be asked to appoint a spokesperson. The Board of Education does not respond to public comments, and to this point, comments expressed do not represent the position or opinion of the Board of Education or District 38. Finally, we ask that you keep comments shared appropriate for our PK through 12 audience and respectful at all times. Should you have an issue with a staff member that you would like addressed, please consider sharing these criticisms and concerns with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff and involving the board as necessary.
Okay, well, we have one speaker, and our speaker is Bella Pemberton. Bella, if you want to have a seat right here, there's a microphone right there for you, and we will start the clock at 3 minutes when you begin. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. So hi, my name is Bella Pemberton. I just finished up my junior year, and I am the editor-in-chief of Palm Ridge High School's Bare Truth newspaper. I stand before you today to advocate for the continuation of our newspaper class and program, which was decidedly cut next year due to low enrollment. Despite maintaining a small staff of just 5 students this past year, we have managed to post dozens of stories and achieve remarkable success. The Bare Truth earned 9 Colorado Student Media Individual Best of Colorado Student Awards, including 4 first-place entries this year. These accolades demonstrate not only our commitment and hard work, but also the quality and impact of our journalism. It is important to note that low registration was not an issue for the Bare Truth staff. We are a passionate but small group of students who have consistently delivered high-quality content, showcasing our school's achievements, addressing important issues, and providing a platform for student voices. We proposed a convergent media website in collaboration with Palm Ridge Television to further enhance our program and address low enrollment. Unfortunately, this idea was rejected due to perceived issues with career and technical education, CTE state funding. However, this reasoning is unfounded. Journalism, both in print and online, is an integral part of Colorado's CTE pathways. Numerous schools across the state have successfully implemented convergent media programs, blending different forms of student media into a cohesive, modern platform. By cutting our newspaper class, you are not only silencing our voices, but also depriving us of essential learning opportunities. Journalism teaches us critical thinking, communication, research, and writing skills that are invaluable in any career path. Moreover, it instills a sense of responsibility and civic engagement, encouraging us to be informed and active citizens. As Walter Cronkite once said, journalism is what we need to make democracy work. Our newspaper is not just a class. It's a vital part of our educational experience and our development as informed, engaged citizens. Cutting this program would undermine these fundamental principles. I urge you to reconsider this decision. Don't censor our students. Allow us to continue to write, report, and share the stories that matter to our school community. Preserving the Bare Truth is not about keeping a class. It's about supporting student expression, fostering important life skills, and maintaining a proud tradition of excellence in student journalism. Given the district's mission to elevate the futures of every student every day, it is sad to me that you would consider removing the most fundamental form of civic engagement for our students. How can we justify this decision when it directly contradicts the commitment to fostering engaged and informed citizens prepared to contribute meaningfully to society? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bella. Okay, we are moving along to our next item on the agenda, which is item B6, board member comments. We'll start with Mr. Brown.
Not much, but as a first-year board member, I just want to say what a great experience and honor it was to be able to be there over the weekend and see the graduation ceremonies and hand out the diplomas. It was a really fun thing to do. And I do love seeing all these fun programs that we're presented with tonight. All stuff I have an interest in too, so it's great to see the kids getting into it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Schwartz.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts. Number one, graduation was the culmination of everything that we do. And it's why we're here. And to see nearly 500 18-year-olds go off into the world with fire in their eyes and excitement in their bellies was very energizing for all of us. So thanks for the opportunity to the staff to allow us to do that. Secondly, and of equal importance, is Robotics presentation here was 1/10 of what they do. But the real exciting piece for us as community members and sponsors is they're taking the art of the academic possible and turning it into the art of the realistic application that is what people do during their livings, progress our societies forward, and our country's core competency is still innovation. This is a great example as to why. And the more we can sponsor, support, and encourage it, the more wonderfully creative thinking is made, and then it is migrated into something that's practical, usable, and scalable. And that's really what we do well as a country. So kudos to that team. And thirdly, to Ms. McAllister, we've been so proud of all the work you've been doing for the last several years, from Portrait of a Graduate to migrating into Portrait of a lifelong instructor, teacher / learner, to providing something that maps to what our economy and employers are asking for and what our national trends are doing in terms of matriculation rates. And for those of you that are like me and didn't know what matriculation meant, because it's a very multiple syllabolic word, it means graduating high school and not going on to traditional academic pursuits, but entering the workforce or not being sure of what you do. And programs like CTE and trade-related educational programs allow students to find out what else might provide them interest. And that's a real important part of what we do for a living. So thank you.
Dr. Shank.
I also thought the graduation ceremonies were just awesome. Filled me with a sense of pride for just being part of it. Really appreciated that and enjoyed looking in their eyes and saying congratulations, and that was just wonderful. I also want to say that our moving towards looking for something for every student every day to set a fire under them before they leave school, it is a really important approach, and I'm really glad to see that we are leaning really far into that.
Mr. Norris.
I have no comments.
All right. Well, I'd like to start off by saying thank you to everyone that has engaged and reaches out to the board. I want to thank our students for expressing their comments and for your comments. District 38 values hearing from our stakeholders, and when it comes to practices, policies, procedures, we always prioritize the best interest of our students and our staff and our families. And to that, I do want to extend an apology to Ms. DeLello, because it is important that we are recognizing her award as well. She's a pretty amazing teacher as well. It's always our desire to lean in and hear our D38 community and every stakeholder, from our students and their families to our staff to our community members here in D38 who live in this area, work in this area, play in this area. We're all neighbors, and we're still somewhat a small community, so everyone in this community still has a voice, and We all care deeply about the students in all of our schools, and this is our community. These are our schools, of which I'd like to also extend a very, very hearty congratulations to our graduating class of 2024. And we've got some graduation parents in the room with us now tonight, actually. From Lewis Palmer High School to Palmer Ridge High School to Monument Academy's first graduating class, our incredible students here in D38, with the support of their loving parents and their engaged families and the engaged and passionate staff, should give us each much to be proud of for what our students have achieved, and give us hope and excitement for the future that lies ahead for them and for us. And so whether students out there, whether you are going to further your education near or far, going into a career field, or service, military service, or mission work or travel, we just want to say, and I'd like to say on behalf of D38 and the board, may your journey be blessed. And congratulations to class of 2024. Ms. Wetzstein.
Okay, I will ask Mr. Ridgway if he'll pull up the superintendent update slides. And I'll launch with our students are officially on summer break. So we have closed out the 23-24 school year. And as many have said, we are so proud of our graduates. And Saturday was a wonderful day at the World Arena with both of our operated high schools. Also, during May, the executive team and our board had the pleasure of celebrating our staff, and so we served breakfast or lunch at all of our schools as a way to say thank you to our staff for all they do for our students. We also had our annual LERM Day Awards ceremony, and kudos to the staff, students, and community members who have made a difference and were recognized for supporting students with special needs. Some of the staff award recipients were Evan Cochran, Sumatra Black, Andy Hamill, Cassandra Ramsey, Ann Tellez, the Bear Creek Elementary School kitchen staff, Dominic Markham, Diana Champion, and Joan Morey. For student awards, we recognized Bryant Wainwright, Brian Miller, and Carly Scopus. We also had a community award, Dave Jones with the Monument Warriors, and the ultimate award went to Mr. Rick Frampton as the founder of the LERM Day Awards. Just last week, Kilmer hosted a special drop-in of the USAFA's Wings of Blue during their field day event. A huge thank you goes out to several Kilmer staff and parents, as well as community members from the United States Air Force Academy for making the event possible. At Lewis Palmer Middle School, students in the World Studies class recently completed an amazing race-themed final project. The project led students on a virtual journey around the world where they explored various cultures, landmarks, and historical events. Students worked in teams to solve clues and complete challenges that tested their knowledge and problem-solving skills. The immersive experience allowed students to apply what they've learned throughout and fostered teamwork, critical thinking, and a deeper understanding of global diversity. At Lewis Palmer Elementary School and Ray Kilmer Elementary School, they hosted recent talent shows. Congratulations to both for such entertaining shows. Students entertained with a variety of acts such as gymnastics, singing, musical performances, dance, comedy, magic, and even a glow dance. Kudos to all involved in helping make these memorable performances happen. And we have lots of athletes to celebrate this evening. Kudos to many of our athletic teams for reaching the CHSA state playoffs. Palmer Ridge women's tennis, women's lacrosse, women's soccer, women's golf, and track and field, and Lewis Palmer women's tennis, men's lacrosse, men's swim, and dive, women's golf, baseball, and track and field. Congratulations also to Eli Hobson from Lewis Palmer High School for winning the 100-meter breaststroke and 50-meter freestyle and setting a state record at the 5A men's swimming and diving state competition. We also rounded out May with a celebration at Lewis Palmer Elementary School, their 50th anniversary bash. There were so many community members from throughout history at Lewis Palmer Elementary, and it was so exciting to celebrate with them. There were former staff and alumni, as well as community members, and even Dr. Parsons, the original principal of Lewis Palmer Elementary School. The public event showcased historical Lewis Palmer artifacts, including many photos, celebrated former staff members, and included tours of the school by students. We also want to celebrate the first ever Calculus Bowl. Congratulations to Thomas Clay, Connick Goodwin, Colson Kovacs, Kaya Newell, and Ian Turner for their outstanding performance at the 16th Annual Calculus Bowl. Representing Palmer Ridge and Lewis Palmer, these 5 students made history as the first ever representatives from D38 at this event organized by Northrop Grumman. The team faced 5 hours of answering calculus questions. Some had not met before the event, but they strategized and organized an effective team. At Palmer Lake, they hosted the first ever Palmer Lake Elementary School art show, and this was left behind a legacy of creativity and inspiration. The art show showcased outgoing 6th graders and celebrated artwork created by all students at the school. From colorful paintings to imaginative sculptures, all students had artwork on display. Thank you very much to our wonderful art teacher, Amanda Stamen, for her work organizing the event. And finally, if I may introduce our very brand new Director of Communications, Miss Amy Matizek, who you've seen up working probably throughout and over the last month while she is transitioning from her current position in District 49 as the Communications Department Internal Communications Manager there. We are so grateful for her coming to Lewis Palmer School District with 25 years of experience in communications and public relations. Amy shared that promoting the achievements of staff and students through social media, email programs, employee recognition, and various publications is where my heart lies. Educators make a difference in the lives of students, and I am proud to be a part of telling their story as a school public relations professional. So we'll invite Amy to come up and say a couple of words. Like to just have a seat by Mr. Ridgway, that would be great.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Wetstein. So excited to be here. Today is actually my 7th day officially in the district. I've been around to all the district-operated schools now, so I've been on campuses. I've met so many staff members, and it was only a couple days ago, so it was probably on day 4 or 5, when a colleague said to me, "It feels like you've been here forever." But then they followed that up with, "That's supposed to be a compliment." So I think very quickly I started to feel very welcomed here, started to feel like I fit in, this is a place for me to be. So I very much appreciate the hospitality from everyone so far, and I definitely look forward to building on what my predecessor has done, as well as bringing my own ideas to the position as well. So thank you.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm going to take a president's privilege to just do a shout out that somebody also came to this new start tonight. We have a former board member from D49 here with us tonight, Mr. John Graham, who came to say congratulations. I know that's not proper cadence, but welcome to the team, Amy. Okay, moving on. We are going to move into the the C part of our board meeting. We're going to start with C1, our PCAC, which is our Parent and Community Advisory Committee, and our Financial Transparency Committee year-end reports. And I'd like to welcome two amazing parents that have dedicated a lot of volunteer time to our school district. Ms. Holly Rollins.
So the Parent and Community Advisory Committee will go first. This is off script, but you'll tolerate it, I hope. It was interesting that I happened to be here tonight for the First Robotics because my company is the national sponsor for First Robotics. And it's very near and dear to my heart. I've been involved in that for years, to include going to nationals in St. Louis. So just cannot begin to tell the board how amazing and how transformative this little club can be in the lives of students, because it can give them confidence, the leadership skills, and the analytical framework to launch and go on and do great things. So now, the D38 Parent and Community Advisory Committee, annually we report out to the board on the things that we've accomplished on your behalf this year, and so let's dive in. All right, so for years, and I've been in the district since 2010, we were called the DAC, the District Accountability and Advisory Committee, and so if I slip and say DAC instead of PCAC, old habits die hard. This is one of the few things that parents are involved in that is actually a requirement from the Colorado Board of Education. There is a statutory requirement that all districts have community and parent involvement for accountability. And obviously in District 38, we're clearly looking at student achievement and also just how the district is performing. And so really what we do is, it's very different than PTA or PTO, which I think exists to provide morale at schools, maybe fundraise, et cetera. The PCAC really is involved in providing the community and parents a voice on actual achievement and looking at a full range of indicators that would let us know how an individual school is performing as well as the district. So at the school level, they are called building accountability committees, and at the district level, we now call it the PCAC. And so what we did this year is we really focused on the advisory function of that board. And the advisory function means that the district is not just providing parents status things going on in the district, but that the parents are actually having a voice and providing input to both the board and the administration on things that we think are important. So we tackled not every single part, but we did look at the board's strategic plan, which is framed around 6 pillars. And we conveniently have 6 meetings. And so at each meeting, we took a different aspect of the strategic plan and dove into that and provided feedback in set areas. We rotate on a 2-year basis through all 10 campuses under the purview of the district. And so there is a cadence to how we do that. This year, the very first meeting every year is held at Big Red, in fact, in this room, and then the subsequent 5 meetings are held at campuses throughout the district. So this year we were at Palmer Lake, Monument Academy's West Campus Elementary School, both of the high schools, Lewis Palmer High School and Palmer Ridge, as well as Prairie Winds Elementary. And one thing that is really special, I think, for the parents in the community, most of us are familiar with the buildings that our kids go to, but we're not as familiar with the other buildings. And so you're always able to take a tour. So I've now proudly been in every building currently run by the district, and I don't know, I love it, to be honest. And then the principal from that school will provide a presentation, because even though we're not a huge district and you would think that everything in Tri Lakes is the same, actually each campus has their own distinct culture and vibe, and it's really sweet and special, I think, to see that. And also just to see the passion of the students. A lot of times the tours will be given by students, and I think that the participants really enjoy the fact that we rotate the campuses. Our membership this last year, myself and Renee Butler, who couldn't be here tonight, co-chaired. She will take over next year as the primary chair, and Kirsten Zook will be assisting her. The Board of Education was represented at all of our meetings. Ms. Church was primarily at most of the meetings, and then Ms. Shank is taking over in that role, and so she attended our last meeting, and she'll be ramping up in terms of her oversight. That's important because not an expectation that you guys come to every meeting, but we do exist to serve the board and to provide that accountability and that advisory function. And so having a board member at each meeting is important, so that is channeled back to you. Our administrative liaison is Dr. Brom, and then we actually have parents and staff represented from each of the schools, and I do want to point out that our charter school is included in this construct. We did have student representation this year from Palmer Ridge High School, although in theory any of the schools could provide a student rep, but PR did this year. And then we also had a community member, actually a couple with Wendy Sawtell and Timothy Ray. And so we would love to have greater participation. I'll just be transparent with you and say we really, especially at the building level, we haven't recovered from COVID. So these meetings were forced to go online for a year and a half. And I know I've been mostly involved at Palmer Ridge High School. We used to go from having 20, 30 people in a building accountability meeting to we might struggle to get 5. And I don't know. I have some opinions on why that might be, but I do think that we do a very important role in terms of the accountability and the advisory, and I think we just have to keep casting that far and wide to increase participation. I know I'm preaching to the choir. You know how you're structured, but we do want to provide transparency to the community. I know this meeting's being recorded, and I know some people are watching live, and so under the Board of Education in District 38, you'll see that, I don't know if this has a little highlighter, but right there is where we reside. And so we are fully accountable to the Board of Education as one of their half dozen plus committees that provide oversight to the board in said areas. Each meeting, we have standing committee reports. So while we may take on special topics, there are committees that report out to this group of parents and staff members. And so those committees are the Financial Transparency Committee, which on a monthly basis, or every time we meet, actually we only meet 6 times a year, but it gives us insight into the financials and things that are being tackled by that particular committee. We also have a staff collaboration committee. We look at both special education and gifted and talented, the wellness committee, and the calendar task force. And there might be pop-up issues that are reported out on a frequent basis, but that's kind of our standing construct. As I mentioned earlier, our priorities this year were to take each of the 6 pillars of your strategic plan and to put different aspects of that under a microscope and to ask the PCAC members for their advisory in those said areas. And so we looked at school performance and accreditation. And let me back up and say the one thing we absolutely have to do is to look at the Unified Improvement Plans. That is the requirement. Anything else we ask PCAC to do is like we have a lot of free will as a district across the state. Districts can do what they want, but the one thing we have to look at is Unified Improvement Plans. So it's kind of interesting in District 38, which is not only one of the highest performing school districts in the state of Colorado, but even nationwide. It kind of seems a little like, well, we really need to provide this accountability and oversight, but it's kind of a chicken and an egg. Are we a high-performing district because we have an involved community and involved parents that are the watchdogs, that are monitoring and are providing that accountability? Or are we just an amazing district? It's probably a little bit of both, but I do think that this role is important, and I think keeping our stakeholders informed in terms of school performance is important. So it would always be, regardless of the agenda, any year, we would always look at school performance and our accreditation, and we believe that that is our minimum responsibility to you as a board. We did look at the portrait of a graduate and educator. We looked at Board of Education election. We had a lot of seats turnover this year, and so that was something that PCAC was following. We looked at the consent task force and their recommendations, which was, I think, a big culture issue, especially, I think, in the middle schools and high schools. We looked at the Lewis Palmer District 38 Educational Foundation, which is not, it is an independent 501c3, but they're really partnering with the district to accomplish a lot of things off budget that I think have been really critical to enhancing some of the things that can happen at our schools. We looked at key communicators. We looked at valuing our people, as well as the staff surveys, student surveys. We looked at school finance and fiscal stewardship, and then we also looked at the career and technical education initiatives. So we had a really full year, and I think that everyone that participated would say it was incredibly rewarding, the diversity of things that we were able to put under the microscope. And just applaud you and encourage you to continue to lean into the strategic plan, because I have, in my 14 years in the district, I've really seen us continue to evolve and strive towards excellence. And the cheese keeps moving. Industry is asking for different things out of students. Our community has changed. We're not a sleepy little town that is somewhere between Denver and Colorado Springs. You know, we're a vibrant community. And as board members, I know you have a lot on your plate, making sure that we stay relevant. And so thank you for letting us partner with you in that endeavor. Looking forward to next year, as I had mentioned, I'm rolling off. This is my second year as a 2-year term. Renee Butler will serve as the primary chair, and Kirsten Zook, who you'll hear from in a moment, will be the co-chair. Suggested priorities for the upcoming school year, and by the way, this is not my notes of what I think everyone should do. At our last meeting, we ask the participants things that they would like to tackle next year, and so this is kind of a culmination of everyone's inputs. So we do want to continue to serve as an advisory group to the board. We really felt like that advisory function was really put into focus this year, and I think participants felt like hopefully we provided good advice and ideas, but it was definitely very interactive meetings, and I think when you're asking volunteers to give up their time, I can do lots of things where people lecture at me. I can also YouTube a lot of things where I can get content. But when it's interactive and my voice is heard, it elevates the premium on my time, and I think makes it more valuable for those who participate. We also really enjoy getting out of our buildings and comparing notes across the district, what's working well with this particular building accountability group versus that one, and just learning from each other. And I also think it's a small microcosm of what we're trying to do as a Tri-Lakes community, is where we come together to tackle big things that matter for our community. And this is just one small group of parents who care a lot about our kids and care a lot about our schools. So we do want to continue to encourage parent involvement, and we would love to partner with the school board if you guys have ideas on how we can bolster that, like I said, kind of post-COVID. And I'm not into numbers. You know, it doesn't have to be 50 people or 100 people, but I think 5 is not enough, and so we got to find that sweet spot. We are looking for communication of dates. One of the things we struggled with is this year as a PCAC is there's a lot of moving parts, and because so many different committees tuck up underneath us, we might have a meeting and then the special ed person was like, I can't report out because our meeting's not until next week. Your meeting's Tuesday and our meeting's Thursday. So we're gonna do a better job this next year of kind of synchronizing that so that whenever we have the meetings, those that need to report out will have something to say. Also, we will continue to include Monument Academy as a key partner In my opinion, and I have to be transparent, I was the Monument Academy School Board President in a previous life a long, long time ago. I believe we're one community and we have different schools, and our community wins every time a student stays in district, whether they're in their homeschool enrichment program, one of our charter schools, or in a district school, because it keeps us together as a community. Neighbors are able to be in similar school events and similar community events, and I think it strengthens our community. I think it's a defeat every time a student choices and goes to a district elsewhere or a private school. So I think as a community, having Monument Academy's involvement is key. Speaking of charter schools, the district has received for a potential new charter school. It is the World Compass Academy Charter. I really personally don't know a lot about it. They've recently submitted their application to be a charter under the D38 umbrella. Again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, you guys already know this, but for the community and for full transparency, PCAC will be involved in looking at that charter. Not that in any way, shape, or form PCAC ever has decision authority on anything. We are simply in an advisory role, and so we would just be providing our feedback and our observations based on that recommendation. And just for public comment, I do want to say that charter, if approved, will not be for the school to open this fall. It's looking at the fall of 2025, just in case.
2026.
Oh, 2026, excuse me.
At earliest.
Okay, so in the future. And I think with that, unless you guys have any questions or discussions for me, we are moving on to financial transparency.
Any questions or comments from the board?
It has been a privilege to serve the last 2 years, so thank you.
Before you stand up, Ms. Rollins, I do want to personally thank you for your leadership and service over the past 2 years. You have done a phenomenal job helping guide us as a community committee, and especially keeping us on task and on time. So thank you so much, and we do just appreciate you so much.
And now Ms. Kirsten Zook will come up and present from the Financial Transparency Committee and also our new co-chair for the PCAC.
I just wanted to say thank you to Holly for her leadership. PCAC is well-run and a delightful board to be on. So thank you. We will miss you greatly. You sure you want to retire? Oh, come on.
And congratulations on your new graduate.
Yeah. She's all done. So, in addition to being on the PCAC, I'm also part of the Financial Transparency Committee, and which is headed by Mr. Brett Ridgway, right here. And so it's been I'm just going to report a small part of what we've done this year. It's been a really great committee. We have representation from a great diversity of the schools and community in our group, and a lot of differing opinions, which has been excellent. And everyone has been very good about voicing their opinions in a respectful and really productive way. So I just wanted to say that. So one of our initiatives for this year, which was started by Mr. Ridgway, is soliciting, so, you know, school funding has a lot of different facets to it, some of which the schools can have a lot of input on, and some of which is very much dictated by how the funding comes to us from the state or the community or various places. So we wanted to focus on the slice of pie that schools could have a direct effect of how their budget desires were being recognized, and then hopefully as we move forward, we will be able to present to the board additional concrete. I'm going to go through some of our preliminary findings tonight, but additional things that'll help guide the board in their budget decisions. So at the beginning of the year, Mr. Ridgway presented this flow chart, which was a new way of looking at building level conversations for budgetary items. And you'll see there's sort of a two-tier track. And the group that I work with is on the building advisory committees. I actually was the chair for 2 schools this year on the back committees, and then the PCAC, which Holly was in charge of. And so the idea is that there's more dialogue between all of these groups in a more formalized manner so that we can address and identify key aspects of budgetary needs. So we, the Financial Transparency Committee created actually Mrs. Wettstein helped us create a chart for the schools to work with that focused on the 6 areas of basically the board's areas that the strategic planning. And so this was the first time that we had ever asked the schools to do this. And I will tell you, at the school level, there was a little bit of confusion, but the BACs sort of got into it and were able to, as they understood what we were doing, they really were excited by it. So we presented the charts to the principals to fill out and additionally meet with each of the BAC committees. And that was interesting because the principals independently decided they would meet with staff and teachers separate from the BAC, then report that information so that those staff members could speak freely as like things that they wanted and didn't feel that they would have, anybody sort of judging them for, what they wanted. And then that was reported back to the BAC, and the parents from the BAC committee additionally put in their ideas. And it was very fascinating. I participated at the one Prairie Winds Elementary School, and one of the things we found out was parents thought that, staff members and teachers wanted one thing, like you think they all need this, and really they needed that, and everyone was really surprised by it. And then there were things that the community wanted that the school had no idea. And there were some really, really great initiatives that came out of that. So I think we're at the infancy of this idea. Next year we'll start a lot earlier. We were kind of at it a bit late. But as you can see here, we went through, I worked with another FTC member, Greg, who's sitting back here. He and I met, and we sort of took all of the different charts presented by the schools and tried to find some commonality to build on. And so these were different things which are split apart by the different strategic priorities. And some of them are things that you would definitely pop into your head. But there were others like additional safety training, class size consistency, after-school programming. That was one that came up several times that were really across the board some interesting things. So one of the takeaways, if you want to go to the next slide, one of the big takeaways that we came to understand is starting to look at the schools on a more holistic approach. Not that this isn't being done, but from a parent and community level member, and then also working with the principals through the BAC committees and the PCAC, of saying where are the areas that we can focus and then bring parity among the schools. So, taking a look at sort of big picture items and saying, wow, we had 5 out of our 10 schools, suggest this. Well, what about the ones that didn't think about that? Do they need it also? And what does that mean for the budget? And then where would the Financial Transparency Committee and the PCAC eventually recommend to the board of saying, boy, these are really some strategic areas that we think could involve some investment. Either they're low-hanging fruit and easy things to accomplish without a huge amount of budgetary, sort of stress, and then where are some long-term, bigger picture things that perhaps we need to think about and recommend to the board to really focus on. So I've put up there some future goals, build more budgetary input and consensus, generate community input, and a shout out, which Holly brought up, the building accountability committees, I've been on one now for 8 years, and we've had varying degrees of participation and success. I think this is one of the areas that I would like to work with the new communications director to really start to get community members and parents to understand that it has a horrible name, but it's actually, in my opinion, the best committee. And we focus on some really amazing things, and this is one of them. So anyway, so the different action steps that we're proposing are pretty self-explanatory, but just trying to, Mr. Ridgway feels it's very, very important to get that literally transparency and input from all the different stakeholders of what we could be doing, besides the stuff that, our hands are held and you can't, the funding you get is the funding you get. So anyway, do you guys have any questions about that?
Team, do you guys have any
If you want to say a few more words.
questions, thoughts, comments?
I just want to say that this was the year one, almost year zero, in many ways, in terms of not only the FTC itself, but then them having some involvement in the budget process. And so I really appreciate Kirsten and the whole team that a lot of here. We meet more frequently actually than the PCAC. We probably will meet 9 or 10 times a year. Including some in summer as well. So, so I really appreciate us getting off to a really good start this year. We had some really great conversations and learnings and teachings about how school finance works.
It's a master class, yeah.
So that was great. I really appreciated the engagement and the desire to learn and the retention, because we build on things from meeting to meeting. So thank you very much for coming and making the presentation and getting us off to a good start this year.
How many individuals are on the Financial Transparency Committee?
There is, I believe, 9.
Yeah.
And so, if we recall, back in the fall, we took the step to really organize this formally as a subcommittee of the PCAC. And so as the same process that we did for nominations to find members of the PCAC, then we found members of the FTC as well. And so we were looking for a specific mix and a certain size. So we didn't want to just have something that was too big and unmanageable, and we wanted to make sure we had a good cross section. So there's really was great intention to that, and I was really pleased that so many people did step up and fill into that. And we had great attendance throughout the year.
Shorts.
Yeah, one thing I think is noteworthy for the board, the folks here, and those tuning in either later or on live stream is, first of all, Holly, Greg, and Kirsten, thank you for your investment of time to benefit others. That matters deeply. Secondly, you are also our ambassadors to the community. And because you're not part of the quote-unquote system, you are perceived, whether you are or not, as far more objective than we are. And that brings tremendous value in terms of our attempt to consistently engage with our customers, who are our community members and our voters. So thank you for doing that as well. And Mr. Ridgway did a great job when we kicked off the FTC to talk about that and try to begin to plant the seed with the committee members that the responsibility is more than simply helping us come to quality decisions. it's also inculcating those into the community and getting some feedback to see if there's something we're missing. So thank you for doing that.
No problem. I will tell you, it's a humbling experience. You think you understand it until Mr. Ridgway gets going and you're like, whoa, 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 hold on.
There are a lot of humbling experiences in dealing with Mr. Ridgway.
There's always one in there. Thank you both, and thank you for your partnership too. It really does take a team of community members, parents, staff, to make D38 what it is. So thank you for your partnership. Okay, if there's no more questions, comments, or thoughts on this subject, we will move to our next item, which is C2, consider and approve new curriculum, art and world language.
I don't have any new information to share with the board this evening. I presented information at our April regular meeting for a first read, including the community review process, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Board? Any thoughts? Go for it, sir.
Well, thank you. Oh, yeah. I'd like to make a motion to approve the adoption and purchase of the following curricular resources: Colette High School World Languages for French, German, and Spanish instruction, and FlexArt from Art of Education University for K through 8th grade instruction.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Just one question. I know you mentioned, or I'm sorry, on the form here, it marks only one bid was requested. Do we go out and look for alternative suppliers, or do we just kind of take?
Yeah, we looked at several, and I believe it was about, I'd need to check that fact for you, but we looked at multiple vendors. And that is our typical process, is to look at multiple vendors when selecting a curriculum.
Okay. Just want to make sure. No, I'm good.
No further discussion. We'll take a vote.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Dr. Shank?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye. Okay. Our next item, C3, consider approve preliminary calendar.
Okay, at our recent work session, our calendar task force presented some recommendations for a regulation that you see included in your board packet. This regulation will accompany our policy ICA. It is an administrative regulation, and it encompasses many of our current practices as far as how we structure our annual family and student calendar. And it also memorializes some more recent changes we've made to our calendar based on the task force's recommendations. A couple of examples include that the task force, along with much community and staff feedback through surveys over the course of the last year, validated that the district does not want to implement virtual e-learning days in place of snow days. And so we've included that in the guidance. We've also heard strongly from our staff and our families that they prefer for students to be off a full day for teacher in service versus a late start, as an example. So that regulation is included in your packet, along with a preliminary 2025-26 school year calendar that we're asking for approval of this evening, with the intention of bringing it back for final approval at a later date, closer to the 25-26 school year.
Thoughts, discussion, motion, questions?
Ms. Upchurch, I'd like to make a motion to approve the preliminary 2025-2026 school district calendar as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I think some great recommendations and improvements.
I do want to thank, yes, the staff and the parents that came together in collaborating on those recommendations and the work that was put into that. There were several meetings throughout the school year, and I think it's an excellent improvement, and it's a great example of how we don't rest on our laurels, and we always seek to do better by our customers. And so I want to also thank you, Ms. Wetstein, for leading that group as well.
Yep, my pleasure.
Let's take a vote.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Dr. Shank?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye. All right, so moving on to C4, Human Resources Update. Mr. Ridgway and Ms. Welch. Both will be presenting a detailed human resources update that highlights our hiring data and department process.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, we'll go with that. I think I would have preferred to open it in a different format. All right, so I'm pleased to tell you about the great things that are happening with hiring in the district. Things are moving along in a very positive direction, which is what we would have hoped for. And I do believe there's reasons that things are moving along in a positive direction, and I look forward to highlighting some of those tonight. So, okay. As you may recall, as the HR director, I really focus on valuing our people. The team does. So I work with a great team of people, and I think we do our best to really make sure that each person we interact with, whether it be through the hiring process, through separating, through any interaction, we want it to be positive, and that is something that I think is making a significant difference for us. All right, so again, we'll focus on valuing our people. Right now, we're going to look at this data about new hires. This is specifically certified. So our teachers, special service providers, special education teachers are all considered in this data, and also there are a couple of administrators. I know we've mentioned before, but we felt because this data is relevant to the 24-25 school year, it's important for you to know that we have hired 2 new principals that will be well, Rachel Sellers has already started at Prairie Winds, and then Courtney Harrell, the new principal at the middle school. Both are forming strong relationships with the staff and the students. Courtney has spent a great deal of time at the middle school, which has been really beneficial to support a good, smooth transition. And we also have hired a new assistant principal at Lewis Palmer High School. Brooke Mendez is looking forward to getting started with that team soon. We hired a new district psychologist, a new assistant director of special education, and so far we've hired 40 new teachers. You can see the breakdown of locations there on the side. If you look at that, you may wonder why some schools' numbers are so much higher than others, and that's directly related to the amount of separations. We aren't really creating new positions right now. We're just refilling or backfilling when someone needs to separate for one reason or another. All right? Okay, moving on to classified. We have hired 2 special education paraprofessionals for the 24-25 school year and 2 cafeteria or playground monitors. One thing I want to point out, I was looking at some of the data from this time of year last year. A few really significant things have happened in the last year's time. For one, it was about May 15th last year when we made a decision to offer our special education teachers and special service providers that fit into the hard to fill categories, the 1.2 FTE. We're seeing that we are retaining people with that additional funding, and also when it comes to offering positions, it seems like we are faring much better, which is very positive. It's important for us to have the right people in each of our roles across the board, but specifically in those special education classrooms, we want to hire and then retain high qualified people, and it does seem as though it's making a significant difference to be offering that additional FTE for those positions. Also, we aren't seeing such a significant uptick in the paraprofessionals that Like last year at this time, we had a lot of paras that were leaving. This year, we don't have as many at all. And I think it's directly related to the fact that people in that role will be making at the beginning of next year close to $4 more per hour than they were a year ago. That's significant, and it makes it so they can actually live on some of those wages. And I think a lot of people that may have wanted to stay in those roles in the past are able to now because they are making enough money to make it well worth their time. So that's a positive.
Great job in doing that. Thank you.
Yep, it took a team. It was not me on my own. I know Brett has been a big part of that, but all the HR and business team has been working closely on that. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah. Quick question on that.
Of course.
What percent was that $4?
What percent was $4? Overall percent in the increase?
Mm-hmm.
That is a great question. Mr. Ridgway's over there.
We don't have to look at them, we can just refer to them.
I could guess, but I don't like guessing when it comes to numbers. I think that's quite a significant, I would like to give you the right information. Do you have it, Brett?
It's above 20% probably.
Thank you. While he's pulling up, one thing I'd like to point out is that we did hire a manager of the enterprise operations, and we're excited. It's actually someone who was hired to be a floater in the district, floater custodian, and he has a great deal of experience. We're excited that he applied and accepted that position. Did you get that information, Brett? 32%. That's quite a celebration on minimum wage.
Okay. Yeah, it's significant on minimum, but the folks on non-minimum, it's still significant too. It's not to say they're overpaid or paid where they should be. It's to say it's a great step and a significant percentage increase.
It's much easier from my perspective when I call to offer people jobs when we're paying them a competitive salary.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Also, one of the things that has also gone really well this spring is we've been able to get student summer hires. Last year, we had just a couple of students that were able to help our maintenance team with all the summer work. This year, we're up to 13 in between extended school year and maintenance support. So that is also significant. All right. And on to internal status changes. I know that I'm filtering through the slides wrong. Please know that I realize that I need to do that differently in the future. All right, as you can see, we are tracking our internal status changes very closely. This is something that at this time last year, it was a little bit much to stay on top of the internal status changes. It's actually really important for us to do that, and I feel like we have a very good handle on it now so that we can report out accurate information to the board. There have been 13 FTE status changes. For the most part, that has been people that have gone from a lower FTE to a higher FTE based on available positions within the building. There have been a couple of staff changes within leadership. The special education coordinator is now the director of special ed, Danielle Holmes, dean of students to assistant principals at 2 of our high schools. And then we had an accounting tech who has been working in the business department transferred to the manager of nutrition role. So that is an exciting update, and 6 locations were impacted by those changes. 27 of the total changes were in teaching assignments. Do you have any questions? Okay. All right, right now there's a total, well, if you looked tonight, this has changed a little bit. This was as of May 16th. There was a total of 30 vacancies based on school postings. Those postings, I mean, everything we do in this district is tied directly to our students. I was looking specifically at the buildings, the positions that would really impact the operations of the building that we were trying to get hired before our principals go off for summer break. So as you can see, our elementary school teaching number is still high, but that is across all 5 schools. And middle schools doing quite well. Last year at this time, they were hiring a number of different teachers, specifically a number of special education teachers. So we're excited that that number has significantly decreased. We're moving right along. And as far as our separations, a total of 68 separations in this hiring season, meaning from about the time of beginning of March to now. Some of those have been due to retirement or resignations. Others were due to non-renewals. A total of 61 of the separations were certified staff members, 7 classified, and you can see the location breakdown there on the side. one of the things, there are two things the board has requested from me in recent meetings. One was to really clarify the reason for separations. So we have refined our process, giving people the options of 1, 2, and 3 reasons that they would be leaving. So I'll be sharing that data. And also you've asked us to hold exit interviews. So we've been doing that, and I'll be reporting on that as well tonight.
Question on that?
Sure.
Actually, you're probably going to cover this later, but I was just curious if there's anything glaring that jumped out at you, but are you going to cover that in subsequent?
Actually, right now.
So I'm a good straight person.
Yep. Thank you. Alrighty, so here's one way to look at the data. You can see that a number of employees have left to go to a different district. Out of those, the most significant reason were either better pay or benefits or retired or trip year. Also, there's a few other significant reasons there. And again, these are their top 3 choices. So it's important that we're just giving them unlimited choices. They have to pick 1, 2, and 3, and they list their top choice, their second choice, their third choice.
So this could be any of those, or first, second, or third reason?
Correct. They give us, I'm going to go to this last slide before I do that one. I think the exit interview information gives us a little bit more information on what it is, the reason that they chose to separate. The first question that we ask when we hold an exit interview is, what prompted you to look for another job? The main things that stood out significantly when asked that question were personal or family reasons, lack of support from admin, or income not matching the cost of living. So that was the data on that question that stood out. The second question, do you feel your manager or principal supported your success? Responses that really stood out were some felt that admin was not always supportive of growth, while others felt well supported. Pay was not sufficient for the cost of living. The third question, what were the best and worst aspects of your job? The best parts, administration, community support, and students. The worst part, administration, what do you know? Not enough planning time and lack of mentorship, and lack of policies and internal infrastructure. The fourth question, how has your job changed since you were hired? Administrative changes, community support has declined, transition to internet and tech skills has been required over the course of the years, and multiple things pulling away from the original role that I was hired for. And the fifth question, do you feel valued and recognized in Lewis Palmer School District? Some issues were not resolved by administrative team. Others felt very appreciated and recognized by leadership, parents, and teammates. There's a lot more data that was shared. That's a summary, since I think the board asked for me to just come up with the general themes from those exit interviews.
Question?
Of course.
What have you and the team concluded from the feedback of the exit interviews?
That we are still needed and we have work to do. I think specifically, we know this not just from the exit interviews, but generally speaking, we know that we can do better at supporting the professional growth of our employees. I think we can do better at supporting the emotional growth is always great too, but the professional growth of our administrators, really raising the bar and expecting some consistent supports that our principals will have in place across the board, being supportive of them so that they can do their best work. I think educating people on all the things that are already going on to make sure that when they're making decisions, that they're making decisions based on facts and not emotions, and we can help with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I may, one other data point I think would be valuable for future presentations would be something showing how the turnover has looked year over year, and also compare that to state averages.
That's good feedback. Thank you. I'm happy to provide that.
So one thing I was thinking about in that regard, just in the spirit of celebrating quality work, this is 50% of the turnover that we had 3-4 years ago. And I tried to do exactly what Todd said and find out what normal looks like. And it appeared as though normal in our state, or I don't know that it's acceptable, but it had been normal, is in the 12 to 15% range. This appears to be in the 8% range. And while nobody likes to say it in public, the truth of the matter is some turnover is organic in medium and large size organizations. Some, by the way, in at least commercial entities, is intentional.
Some of it is intentional in our district too.
Right, and some percentage of it is absolutely healthy to get fresh sets of ears and eyes and concepts and energies and all that going on. So what the team has done to begin to bridge the parity gap financially and to continue to make this an attractive place to enter has been really tremendous work. And to cut that turnover ratio by 50% is very significant when you're talking about 825 people.
One of the things that wasn't pointed out in my presentation that makes my phone calls when I call to offer positions a lot easier is the fact that we are giving credit for up to 16 years of service now, and that's big to be able to do that. Before we were giving up to 9 years. Those sorts of things make a significant difference and make us more competitive with the other districts around us.
Right, and if you're a building leader, which you were at that time, and you spent 25% of your first semester onboarding new teachers, now you're only spending 12.5% of that time, and you've freed up 12.5% of your time
So
to
now
perform your mission.
we have the time we need to do exactly what you asked about before. What could we be doing to help our teachers and supporting them?
Exactly.
So you do have more time when you're not hiring.
So it's a
as many
tremendous result-based investment.
people. Okay, that's very good feedback. Thank you. All right, so what's working well? As I look at over the course of the last year, what is working well with the HR team, and the HR team works very closely with the business team. I would say we're all in this together, but I think we're very clear about who's doing what. We expect, I know I expect people to get their job done, and they need to get it done in a very timely manner because people are looking at various districts when they're looking at ours, and we want to have the best customer service experience when people are working with our district and deciding which team to go with. And if we can respond within, sometimes people say, I just got off the phone with the principal 5 minutes ago and you're already calling to formally offer me. Like, well, yes, because they are probably going to be offered other jobs by other districts and maybe for a little more pay. So if we can treat them well through the process, I think it makes a significant difference. So quick response time, pleasant, positive customer service, and that is across the board. Like I said earlier, whether you are separating or you're getting hired, it needs to be a positive experience. Very proactive and just focusing generally on valuing our people every step of the way. Any questions?
Alicia had a question.
Sure.
We heard earlier about some priorities that was leaned into and discovered through the Financial Transparency Committee, and that was classroom size. I don't know if there's room in that, just this discussion when you're leaning into and talking to our staff, if that's a factor or not.
So that is a factor, and that is something that we've been working with the principals through budget conversations for the last few months. So one of the things that we try to help the schools understand, specifically when working closely with principals, is that there is only so much money to go around. And our goal right now is to retain and attract people through a little bit more competitive pay and benefits also. And so because we only have so much money to go around, it's important for us to be thoughtful about how we're going to use the money that each of the buildings has. And we want to empower the leaders to figure out how to best use the dollars specifically for staffing. So there are conversations often with secondary and the elementary schools about what they can specifically do to do what's best when it comes to class sizes and class offerings specifically for middle and high school. There are some schools within our district who are leaning towards, or some who are already have made decisions about having some combo classes. The reason for that is that does bring class size down when it's the right situation depending upon the school, and gives the ability for the school to have smaller class size meeting individual needs better within the classroom. But it's different, it feels different. So the more we can educate our schools on, you have a fixed amount of money, what are you going to do with it? keeping in mind we need to retain people, we need to pay them competitive pay so that they want to work here, because that does matter. So I think having conversations and understanding the impact, will class sizes be a little bit bigger sometimes? Yes, they may. Not always, depends on the school and the students. Did you want to add something, Brett? Okay. Yep, some classes are bigger than others.
And then classroom management. When you have, I don't know, a large class and you have students that with at different levels and different needs. I was curious if that played into any of the satisfaction questions either.
Did you want to add something?
Not yet.
I was going to say, I think that goes back to what we've talked about a few times, professional development, helping people to have the skill set they need to be successful in the classroom, giving the principals the support they need to support the classroom teachers and be visible and be aware of where there are needs and help grow the teachers where needs be. So.
Yeah. To the earlier point around class size, what we've really been striving for is better consistency in class size and considering student needs within those class dynamics, to your question, Mrs. Church.
So given the fact that nobody on the board here is a professional educator and you are, it would seem logical, I should say, that different subjects and different age levels of different classes have different general capacity levels for students. Is that also fair for us to think about as we're absorbing this quantity of data?
Yes, very much so.
Okay. Could you expand on the combo classes you mentioned? I just heard about that concept the other day.
Yep, I figured you may have. So some of the schools that have larger numbers in some of their grade levels have decided to reallocate some of the budget dollars and put money into, rather than having really large classes of up to sometimes 30 kids, do a combo class. And like if they have 2 grade levels that are back to back, like 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that, they're able to say, okay, we know we need two classes of 2nd grade and we need 2 classes of 3rd, but if we also have 1 additional class that's a 2-3 combo, it brings all the class sizes down. And you would typically be very thoughtful about which kids would be most successful in a combo class. And then you also would want to make sure you have a teacher who has the skill set to really be successful teaching that class. And so potentially maybe not putting a new teacher who doesn't have any experience. I know what some of the schools who have done already made decisions about. I know Prairie Winds has already decided to have 2 combo classes. The nice thing that they were able to successfully do is Mrs. Sellers was able to find 2 very experienced teachers who wanted to teach the combo classes, rather than it being like, oh, we hired this new person and they were willing to take it to get the job. It's really important to put the right people in those type of classrooms and all classrooms, but someone that understands how to differentiate, which again, we would want that in all of our classrooms, but someone who's highly skilled at that and classroom management and really could be successful in that environment.
Is that the first time we've done that here in this district?
No, I don't think it's the first time we've done it. It's the first time we've done it recently.
Yeah. I actually had a high school class that was like that. It was 2 years back to back, 2 periods. So it was the honors English history program. So it works.
Yeah. They did some combo classes at Prairie Winds before I started that were somewhat similar. It was more of a gifted setup, but they did do them. They actually did 3rd through 5th at times. Yeah.
Any other questions or thoughts and comments from the board? No? All right. Ms. Welch, thank you so much. This was work that I remember us talking about last year and leaning in and listening to our staff and how can we improve on serving them and why are we seeing them leave and how can we retain. So I know that this is a lot of work and valuable work. And I think we've seen an improvement since you've started this, so thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Very noticeable.
We have amazing principals too that are helping us with this work, so I appreciate what they're doing to help move this forward. Now the problem is I'm the next presentation and I'm going to make sure I open the slide deck correctly. I want to open it here or here.
Yeah, just to echo what Tiffany said, I think we've seen a tremendous improvement since you've been in that role.
Okay.
I concur. Great results.
Yep.
Oh, Okay, thank you. Thank you.
For what it's worth, I didn't notice anything.
I know. I think they sometimes help me with these things. So clearly I'm technical. Yeah. Okay.
All right, our next item, C5, first reading, personnel policy revisions.
All right, so we have 5 policies for you to review. I have made some simple slides for you to focus in on these 5 different policies. So first of all, the Family and Medical Leave Act, the specific areas that I'd like you to focus in on as you review these are all staff would be moved to any staff who is on family medical leave, which meaning like they're coming and going. Sometimes somebody is on FMLA and they're gone for up to 12 weeks. Other times they're in and out because maybe it's a sporadic FMLA. It's important for you to know in those situations if the impact would be significant on our students with someone coming in and going out. There are times based on this policy that somebody could be moved to an alternative position that might be a little bit easier for kids to deal with during the, someone going in and out. Also, there's some rewording of benefits and protections and updates to legal references and other policies. The red line version is available for you to review. Policy GBGH, which is sick leave bank, it would change from catastrophic illness to long illness. There's an addition that the application would be submitted anonymously. Sick leave bank is to not be used for staff leaving the district. What that's about is sometimes someone knows that they're transitioning out and they're out for a number of days. This allows for us to really hold them accountable for trying to do their best to work and not take advantage of the sick leave bank. Clarification for who leave can be used for, such as if you're going to be out due to spouse, children, and parents. There is some specification around bereavement. Just to be clear, this would be specifically for people who are out of days. They can apply for 2 days of sick leave bank based on this policy if we approve the updates. There would be some not qualifying situations such as cosmetic and non-medical surgeries or COVID, and denial and appeal process would be added HR director to make final decision, and updates to some cross-referenced policies.
Question on sick leave bank.
Sure.
What is the balance in the bank currently?
Ron, you ask really good questions. I'd love to get back to you on that.
Mr. Ridgway doesn't have it at the tip of
Nope, I can't ask him. I don't think he'll have the answer to that. No. Yep.
Okay, let me give you the rationale behind the question, because the number is simply a number, it's not relevant. It'd be interesting to understand how often it's asked for, how often it's actually granted, and if there's enough balance in the bank to meet the needs of an 825-person enterprise.
So there is enough balance that we have what we need to meet needs. We actually have a sick leave bank committee that is formed that comes together to make decisions about whether or not the sick leave bank request is approved or not. Did you want to add something,
I'll
Amber?
just add that participation in the sick leave bank is optional as well, so it is not really all employees participating.
Sure. It's voluntary. Right. It's a great chance to do something for your teammates.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Moving on to policy GDE, GDF, which is support staff recruiting and hiring. It would be changing to, there's just some very simple changes. Changing shall to must. There would be some changing of wording and adding of legal references. Policy GBGG, we would be changing the 3 days of consecutive leave to 4. Just to clarify, when a staff member is going to be out, as it stands right now, if they're out more than 3 consecutive days, they will either be docked on day 4 or they have to provide a doctor's note. Based on law, that should have been 4 days, so we thought we would make the proper adjustment. All right, do you have any questions? All right, it's a pleasure. I hope you enjoy the rest of the board meeting.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope, okay. Moving right along. Okay. And again, we will vote on this in our regular June board meeting is when we will vote on that. Okay, C6, preliminary 2024-2025 budget presentation, approval of non-academic student fees for 2024 and 2025. So, We got about an hour left.
Hope that's enough.
I'm kidding. Mr. Ridgway, please.
So, Colorado Revised Statutes 2244-108C requires that the state or that the school board receive a proposed budget at least 30 days prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. And so that's what we do here in May at this meeting, is present to you a proposed budget. This is not meant for you to be voting on, and so we will not be taking any action on tonight except for the component of proposed student fees. But as in terms of the budget itself, you're not taking action on it tonight. And really what this package is kind of a compilation of the conversations we've been having going back to February, where we started talking first about enrollment, then we started talking about School Finance Act, and then we started talking about how is that going to relate to compensation changes, and et cetera. So all those pieces that we really talked about kind of come together in this 148-page document.
I poured through all 148 pages.
That's
Did you
excellent.
do your homework?
I don't think I looked at all of them, but I looked at a lot.
So I will just draw your attention to a couple of the pages here, and then we'll go and look at the non-academic fees that we do want to take action on today. And I'm sitting here on the table of contents because this is hopefully something that you recognize, you know, again, these big topics that we've talked about throughout the course of the spring and kind of how they come together all into this one single package. I've showed you this page before, and just reference to you that this is actually the one page that satisfies the statutory requirements, which is that you receive a budget by fund that talks about revenue and expenditures and fund balance. And so this is the one page that satisfies that. There's another kind of twist to it, if you will, that to see some historical trend, and we do have that historical trend on other pages as well. But I think the one thing I would maybe focus on in this is that we're launching off of, we have the 24-25 proposed budget launching off the 23-24 amended budget. We're not launching off of 23-24 actual results yet, because of course we're not done yet. And we don't want to really launch off of the 23-24 original budget, because the amended budget is the one that became the more accurate version with updated October count, beginning of year fund balance by fund, carryover items, and things like that. So that's why those are the two data sets presented here. Questions on that? I'm glad that Kirsten's still here, because I forgot to mention when she was up here talking, that not only was she part of FTC, of course, but she was also part of the Guiding Coalition. And the Guiding Coalition provided us some good feedback, which I am still working on implementing a lot of it. But these graphs here were a big part of what they wanted to see in terms of understanding the revenue. And so this is a kind of an important chart that, in terms of all of the revenue that we receive in the district, 73% of that is related to the School Finance Act. So nearly 3/4 of all of our revenue comes from that one single source. Now there are components of that School Finance Act revenue, you know, that this outer donut, then in terms of the inner pie, has 3 different components, being the local property taxes for the regular, the state share, and the specific ownership tax. And so it's always important to remember that as well. So it's 73%, but there's 3 and really 2 major components of that revenue.
Just a point of clarification for anybody that's listening in and isn't intimate with this, because it's got a degree of complexity that can sometimes take a long time to have the reality soak in. But if you look at the blue and the light green components of the pie, what you notice is it's bigger than the local property tax piece is bigger than last year. And so what really happened when everybody's property taxes went up, which hit every single property owner in our school district and county and state is it took some burden off the state in terms of educational funding. So it did not increase funding to schools in our case. Correct?
Exactly. The 73% number didn't change. What changed was the size of the pieces of the pie that
Right.
support that 73%.
The
number.
contributors changed.
Correct.
And the dollars we contributed changed. And it did not impact revenues to the state, did it?
Did not impact revenues to the state?
Right. The
No.
state still generated the same
Right.
quantity of revenues.
Mhm. It's how the state was able to reduce the budget stabilization factor in the 23-24 year and how the state was able to reduce the budget stabilization factor to 0 in the 24-25 year was really because of the growth of local share.
Right. So we did see some benefit from it in a direct manner.
Yes,
but that
we see
benefit's finite.
it only through the mechanics of the School Finance Act.
Right. Right.
Not.
So sorry for that transgression, but the point is when we talk to our neighbors and members of the community and they say, why isn't the school getting more money? Because I'm paying more in. This is the answer.
Can I ask a quick question? When we look at bond levy and it's, why do we consider that revenue source? Because that goes straight into paying off the capital projects that the bond levy passed for, correct?
It is dedicated for that purpose, but it is still revenue that we collect and payments that we must make every year. So it's still something that we have to recognize on our books. It's not completely on autopilot. It just should be very, very procedural.
But it's not dollars that translate to benefiting students directly, other than making sure they have a building and a safe, welcoming environment to be educated in.
Correct. It's nothing that goes to the daily operations, and that's the override levy, of course, it does. And you see that as 4% of the total revenue, the bond levy being 7%. But again, as you're saying here, it doesn't support any of the operations, only to service the bond payments. And that's why there's multiple ways that revenue has to be looked at, and this is being one of them, where we talk about the revenue source, the revenue sources, and then we also have to look at the revenue types, and so the inner pie on these two charts are exactly the same. What's changing is the donut around them, and how do we characterize that? So yes, 36% of our revenue comes from local taxes. 51% of our revenue comes from state sources. So if we recall, these three pieces right here, which represent the School Finance Act, that's only a portion. The property tax that's there is only a portion of the local taxes that we generate, because we just talked about the override and the bond. But also the state share that we receive as part of the School Finance Act is only a portion of the state revenue that we receive, because there's things like Exceptional Children's Education Act and other revenue sources that are part of that. So this really is kind of a Rubik's Cube that you have to be able to look at and know which perspective are you really looking for a question, or you have a question that you're looking for an answer on. And the question has to be clarified and the answer has to be properly nuanced so that it is giving you the proper context for that conversation that you're having.
Thank you.
So another page I wanted to show you, which I sent you this weekend and I received no feedback from, so either you didn't like it or
probably didn't understand it.
Or you wanted to know
Or we
more
were
about
respectful of the fact that you were out of town. We wanted to respect your privacy.
That was nice too. I appreciate that. Thank you. We've talked a little bit about this year about wanting to head towards a student-based budget approach, and how we weren't really able to accomplish that this year because we had a lot of inertia, a lot of traditional decisions that weren't able to be changed really on flipping the switch. And so a budget normalization process really is intended to identify things at a school level in particular that are unique to that school and provide a cost impact to that school, but should not be either penalizing those students or on inappropriately benefiting students in that school. And so we identify categories here in the lower right-hand corner, talking about where special education is happening, what are the employee benefit costs, the extracurricular program, utilities, things like this. And we quantify that all on a per student basis, and we make normalization adjustments to that so that we can have a proper distinction of what the gross budget should be by building, but also knowing that there's an underlying normalized number that every student is really funded exactly the same because they are being funded to us exactly the same. And so this series of charts here starts at the revenue on the far left, and we're focusing on the general fund here, of course. And so what that shows you is that there is, on a per pupil basis, $10,628 of per pupil revenue in the general fund this year. That is going to be able to be used for the expense allocation pattern of a cost through the general fund. There are things that have come off of that revenue, what we call revenue allocations, that go to other specific priorities. And I will zoom in there a little bit. And so I've got these shown below the line. So for instance, every student is paying for transportation, whether they use transportation or not. And when we're going to talk about transportation fees here in a minute, that's why I wanted to highlight and accentuate this, because every student in the district is paying $387 of their per pupil revenue for transportation, whether they use it or not. Capital maintenance, we talk about $3 million worth of capital maintenance that we have in our budget this year. Well, that's $581 of every student's per pupil revenue that goes to that. Property liability insurance, what I call financing here. These are the things that we're paying for the equipment for the energy service contract. So these are things that, as I presented to you before, these aren't things that come first in a priority sequence necessarily, but they're things that we kind of have to just deal with and get them out of the way, put them aside, because there is necessity in what we're pursuing there. So the point is really that of this whole general fund revenue bar, there's going to be $10,628 of it that can be thrown into the expense allocation, which would be the second graph. Question, sir?
Two questions. Oh, actually, one I found the answer to in all this stuff. But second question is, some of these things are going to be relatively consistent year on year, and some of these will not be. Is that correct? For example, we're quite a ways behind the eight ball on capital improvement maintenance, right? But at some juncture, we will be caught up and back to equilibrium. I suspect that number may in fact go down. Conversely, transportation, unless we get out of that business, stays the same and maybe goes up with some kind of COLA. Is that fair to?
Yes, each of these has its own story and its own math that's driving the quantification of that. So yes, to your point, if we wanted to reduce our capital maintenance from a $3 million to a $2.5 million target, then yes, that per pupil amount would potentially reduce.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So in the second graph section here, the expense allocation pattern, this again, the key point here is to identify what is the direct spend available to schools. That's what DSAS is. And in a student-based budgeting approach, we really want to get to this 70% threshold at a minimum. And I want to really accentuate direct spend as the word here. This isn't an allocation exercise. This isn't just an exercise of having spends and allocating it out. We want to identify this direct spend component, and this is the full component that we want to eventually have in the hands of principals to make decisions for their buildings, to what they understand their students and their staff need. And so of that full 10,628, then we've identified 70.1% of that as being DSAS for this year, and that means other things are also being funded, special services, special education, IT, the facility maintenance operations portion versus the project portion that we did earlier. This is the kind of the daily maintenance portion, and central services here as well. So again, we just start to peel the layers off and work to this kind of clean core piece of what's available for students at the building. And then what I presented here on the far right of the chart is just 3 different views of that, from what does it mean from an elementary perspective, a middle school perspective, and a high school perspective. I'll get to the high school and the coat of many colors there in a second. First, I'll focus on the elementary, and the three bars that I'm showing here are the consistent DSS number, that's 7449. What would be the normalized amount? Meaning, hey, we know there are things about special education, there are things about utilities, there are things about benefits that we are making accommodations for, and so that's an appropriate difference from the DSS number. And then what we have is what is the budget currently being developed at? And so this is what starts to show you some of the issues that we are dealing with that we can't just fix on a snap of our fingers. So elementary schools, what this is telling us is elementary schools as a group are having some excess funding, and that's because of some of the decisions that we've made in the past. And if we want to keep making those decisions, that's fine. My point here is to make sure that you know the impact of decisions that are either have been made or will continue to be made. And what you can tell then is that because this brown bar is above the line for elementary, then that means there has to be below the bar elsewhere in order for us to still balance out. And so you see middle school a little bit below the bar, and you see high school a little bit below the bar.
So quick question on this.
Yes.
Is this dynamic foundationally because of building-based versus student-based budgeting?
This, I wouldn't call it building-based as much as I would call it traditional budgeting, which is staff allocations and big programmatic budgeting. And in my experience, that was always that's what I identified as to be one of the most confusing things for our community. Was we bring money in on a per pupil basis, and if we spend it on a big programmatic view, well, if we spend $2 million on math, but we got $10,000 per pupil, people aren't able to follow that.
For good reason.
And also it really clouds decision making behind those layers of complexity as well. So so it's not that's building that was, it's the tradition of it. And so the tradition of how we've budgeted here has created some of this imbalance. Again, if that's imbalance as we get through this and we get more clarity on it, and that's balance you want to maintain, then that would be an adjustment to the normalization calculations that I make, and we can do that. But to this point, I'm only identifying these 6 items of budget normalization. And this is all very pro forma, right? Because the budget is being built on the brown column. I would want it to be built on the light blue columns this year, but we're not going to go there because we don't want to break anything in the pursuit of this. But we also want to know, put our eye on the ball and say, where are we going, and what do we want to accomplish, and why?
So I've got a question. I'm assuming that you will get us through the point where we understand why it is the way it is, so we can better make decisions.
Right. And some of those things we've talked about already. The class size question is part of this situation in the elementary level, and that's where when I was mentioning that some class sizes need to get bigger, it's because of the point as Amber was talking about. What we need is class size balancing, because we have some class sizes that are really huge, but we have some class sizes that are really small. And that's a challenge for us, and we have to identify it, and we have to work on that over time, and then see, okay, can we get to a certain point, or is there a point that we're not willing to go? But the first thing is to identify it and to quantify it and say, okay, let's start making some steps here and see what is that impact. On the right side, the high school slide, the intention for that is to show that at the high school experience, you have your 8 classes And don't ask me too many questions about a block schedule. I don't know much about it. I take a number and I divide it by 8. That's what it means to me. But one of the things that's interesting here is the cost of extracurricular. Again, this isn't a good or bad thing. It's identifying it for what it is. And what this is saying to you is that in the far right column, next year at our 2 high schools, every student is contributing $533 of their portion of PPR for the extracurricular program, whether they participated in it or not. Again, putting it out there, knowledge to be out there, transparency, so that we know, hey, that's a number we're comfortable with, or that's a number we want to work on. It's a little bit higher than what the normalized target would suggest, and the normalized target is actually, in my perspective, already a pretty rich number. So the fact that we're spending more on that is something that I think is worth diving into. And again, either that means I'm able to adjust my normalization formula, or we make adjustments to the programming. So, point on all this again is to say this is where I believe we should be heading, because we can make more intentional decisions with greater transparency, while also providing greater autonomy to school leaders to make decisions that benefit them in their building by giving them access to the full scope of their budget and not just a real limited slice of it. Questions on that?
What's the next step for us to understanding this?
Well, we are undergoing the work and having the conversations, as Alicia mentioned in her presentation this year. Because once I figured out late winter, really early spring, that we weren't going to be able to make the full conversion to student-based budgeting this year, we said, okay, we have to identify a few particular issues with a few particular buildings and have those conversations kind of almost on a preliminary basis, if you will, before we really get ready to a full launch of this. And so that's why it's basically put off for a year. And when we get into this cycle next year, hopefully we're having more of a full launch of this, of student-based budgeting. And then there'll be greater clarity. There's obviously a lot behind this whole process. So I'm showing you one page. This is a process that I developed about a little over 10 years ago. I've been published on it. I've made presentations all around the country on it. And so it's a really thorough process that has stood multiple layers of scrutiny and has a great opportunity to provide clarity and success for the school district going forward.
Looking forward to that, to learning.
Mr. Ridgway, I wanted to say thank you for this. This is, I know it's a lot of work, and when I joke about taking longer to go through this process, it's because it's the end of the year budget session where we have to make a vote, and you are all presenting to us what are our priorities, and making sure that we are being good stewards. And so it takes time and mindfulness to do that as a board. And this information is so helpful in trying to figure out and determine what are the priorities when it's presented to us, and what are the whys and what are the hows. And so I just thank you very much for this.
Sure, you're welcome. I mean, informed decision making is my mantra, right? And so I want you guys to know as much as you can, as much as you are able or want to, in terms about what the decisions we're asking you to make. I mentioned earlier that you need to see some historical trend information as well, and so you'll see pages that look like this, one for the general fund, and then later in the package you'll see all the other non-general funds, and this is meant to provide you historical tracking, so going back to the 18-19 year through our last year of completed actuals being 22-23 into our current fiscal year, and then projecting forward into next year for 24-25. And for each fund, I'm basically looking, trying to present this at, kind of what is the most informative, again, to provide informed decision making. What is the most informative perspective I can present this at? So you'll see things like how I've arranged the revenue here to talk about the School Finance Act, because as we just talked about, that is the big source of revenue. And we've talked a lot about how there are the three components of that. And so we want to have eyes on that all the time. And then other things get bundled into other, because relatively speaking, their materiality is not so big. Spend by location then is, we talk a lot about spend by object, meaning is it salaries or is it utilities or whatever. There's also the view of expense in terms of looking at it by location.
Can I ask a question that you may answer in your presentation, but I'm just going to jump in now? When you mentioned the School Finance Act, typically by Colorado Constitution, the School Finance Act has to increase by the rate of inflation plus growth. Does the new Finance Act will be forthcoming, does that affect that at all, or still that part stays the same?
No, that's part of Amendment 23. That's constitutional.
Yeah.
So the new School Finance Act can't override the Constitution, but it has to work with it. And so, yes, now the new School Finance Act is not a fully funded idea yet. And what they're proposing to do is kind of bootstrap it over the next 5 years, put it into place 1/5 at a time, if you will, and use state education fund money to fill in a gap if that's what is needed to happen. So when you hear that, hear one-time money, state education fund money. So if the School Finance Act is not balanced on its own, then they will use state education fund money in these ensuing years, and while they figure out on the state level how can the revenue come in and match that new proposed total of the new School Finance Act. Is that answering your question?
Yes, it did. I was just curious. I know that how Amendment 23 works, but I didn't know if the new Finance Act, part of that, how that is going to play in. Obviously, the rate of inflation, they base it on what the cost of TVs and toothpaste, but it doesn't really cover what true inflation and cost of living is.
And it's called the Boulder-Denver Index. So I was like, oh, there's a lot of other places besides Boulder and Denver. Not that they would know that, but in Boulder and Denver. All right, so again, there's lots of other stuff that you should recognize in here, pay schedules, and then all the individual school reports are in here. What you also will see probably for the first time is Monument Academy's information here at the back. Remember, as their authorizer, it is, and as the only elected representatives of the community, it is your responsibility also to approve their budget. They approve a budget, but they present it to you for your approval as well, because they are receiving local monies, local funds, and you are the only folks that are elected by the local community to steward that. So if I could segue then to the student fees portion that we wanted to talk about. Last month, we approved the academic fees. And so it was basically everything on this first page. And then this month, we wanted to bring these non-academic fees, which are basically the athletic fees and the transportation fees. Used to also be the nutrition fees, but now we don't have that anymore. So it's just these two categories. And so we do have recommendations for adjusting these fees from our school leadership for the athletic fees. Basically, you're seeing, I think, about a $20 change in the middle school football and about a $10 change for the other sports. Ice hockey is actually going down next year from $650 to $550, but a few others are going up. And a lot of this is not only just the cost of inflation of paying our own staff, but things that come from hosting the event. Officials' costs are getting really, really expensive in terms of athletics. So, and one thing I'm trying to add some transparency to is this section about cheer. Before, cheer would just be said, hey, it's $235, and then later those families participating in cheer would find out they have to pay another $1,000 plus.
Of course, that's the one my kids is in.
Right, good for you, good for you. Luckily, my daughters steered a different direction in high school. That's okay. I got club volleyball. That was its own rabbit hole of spending. But anyway, so we're starting to bring some, get these things identified and get them published as well, because even though we don't have a huge free and reduced lunch population, it still is the proxy for poverty in education. And when families are qualifying for that, they are then able to qualify for assistance on fees as well. And so the more complete this presentation can be, then the more opportunity that students in those situations can be part of. I think one thing to really highlight then is transportation. Transportation fees this year are $250 per year and $40 for a punch card. So we are recommending an increase to $265. $250 to $265 is a 6% growth. How much are we changing wages by this year? 6%, right? So this is a very objectively determined number. Here's the thing you also need to know about transportation. Let's go look real quick back here. See if I can find it. So the transportation budget for next year you see is about $3 million. $3 million for which we transport about 800 kids a day. If we take into consideration the amount of subsidy that the state is providing us, well, let me say it differently. $3 million on 800 kids a day on average is $3,800 a year per child it takes for transportation. The state is giving us a little bit of money, $600,000 or so. That knocks that number down to about by about $800. So it's $3,000 per year per child for transportation, of which we're proposing there's a fee of $265. So less than 10% of the cost. And remember, that also assumes that every student is already contributing $375 for PPR to fund transportation. So that's how we're going from $3,000 per student down to $265 per student, because every student is providing $300 of their PPR. And again, I know this is a very uncomfortable topic, but this is the clarity we need for this conversation and this decision. Is $250 a year a lot? Yeah. Is transportation required? No. Is it a tradition? Is it an entitlement? Yes. So how are we balancing all of these things? This is the proposal to balance that for next year, is to say our wages alone went up by 6%. A 6% increase in the fee then is very appropriate. And again, that's only that level because we're asking every student to contribute their PPR to it, whether they use it or not.
So that was exactly where my mind went. What's the fee proposed?
$265 for an annual pass.
And what's the amount each student is contributing out of their entitled
It was
portion?
$375, if I recall.
And so do we, just for quick math, to try to normalize this discussion, of the roughly 5,400 students in the operating schools, how many use transportation?
I say 800 a day, that's 15%.
Okay. So 85% are contributing more per year than we're asking the other 15% to pay.
$387, yes.
Versus 200 and change.
Right. So, again, my point is to provide this transparency and this clarity to that. Is that the right balance? That's the question. And that's not a question, that's not an answer I am going to make, or I'm going to present that question to you. Right now, what I'm proposing is that it's 265, yes, plus 387 for every single student.
Right. So really, it's 285 plus 387 if you're one of the 15%.
Yes.
Right? And 10% of 5,400 is 540, so it's roughly 800 kids, which is what you came up with. Right? So all these numbers jive, right? So those families are contributing, what was it, $353?
For which ones?
The ones. Everyone's contributing 353.
Everyone 380.
Or adding
265.
Right. So was that 515-ish?
Right. Instead of
We have to ask
3,000.
Alicia, she's the numbers.
Instead of 3,000.
Right. So you get my point, right? Is it still being significantly subsidized by the non-users? And the reason I'm taking time on this for the new board members is this was hugely contentious at this time last year. Because we had to do some cutbacks in some of the eastern parts of our district. And there was a lot of conference calls and meetings and discussions. At the end of the day, the simple truth, whether you love it or hate it or somewhere in the middle, is nothing changed from what was proposed. And now that we have this data,
Incredibly helpful.
it's at least a great way to go back to the public and say, everyone's contributing more than we're asking people to pay on an annual basis. And so it is already subsidized by more than 50%.
And I will say, in my prior district experience, that was part of the decision point, is how much are we asking every student to pay versus how much are we asking the writers to pay. And we were working on that ratio and making it actually somewhat equitable.
Right.
So the numbers, instead of 387 and 260, they were more parallel to each other.
You brought up something I was just about to ask. How comparable are we? You don't have to know this number right off the top of your head, but for future knowledge, how comparable are we to our neighboring districts on these fees? And I know a lot of school districts have bus fees as well.
Right. I think the bus fees are very comparable. Actually, I think we're probably a little bit lower.
That's what I heard too.
Than other districts in terms of transportation fees. Athletic fees, I think we're pretty close, maybe still a little bit on the low side, and that's probably why there's so much of the PPR going to the extracurricular program on the general fund. So, again, decisions to be made, I think, in the future as we get greater clarity and transparency. And this is really all, we're able to put this together now because of the work we've been doing in the last 2 years on the finance side in terms of getting greater precision and detail in our records so that we can provide these type of data slices to you that become then meaningful conversation.
Okay. I know we have a motion we may want to make on this one, but I would, real quick, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a quick question on the prior discussion. Priorities as we're going forward with our budget priorities, and we're leaning into what PCAC and FTC, leaning into our buildings on what our spending priorities are to make sure that we're not, as our former board member used to say, Mr. Taylor, let's make sure that when we are making our votes and our decisions on items that we pretty much know they're coming up. For example, the updated system to our schools, our elementary schools is a prime example. We already know that's an ongoing budgetary priority. But this, I think, helps us as we're going forward and about to vote come June on what are the priorities we see for the upcoming year. And what we haven't touched on yet, which I'm sure you will, is we have some one-time dollars coming up from SB 24017 on a priority of our career technical education and innovation. So being able to lean into those priorities as well. So when we're going forward, I guess my question is, when I'm looking through your slide presentation on what some of the priorities are, what are the highlighted key pieces of priorities for spending in our budget coming up for the 2024-2025 school year?
And that is the right question, and that's the question that I will be answering for you as we go into June. And so the way this process should work going forward is that at this meeting in May, you received a proposed budget that comes from us, from administration. You receive feedback from the FTC, and then there should be a reconciliation of that. And so that would be something that you would expect to come at the next meeting, say, here's the reconciliation of those two things. Here's what we are able to do. Here's what we were not able to do. Here's a request that really was kind of off the edge in terms of what we were asking for in terms of level of recommendations. So again, this is like year zero for the FTC process. I still will want to do, I think, some basic reconciliation of it for you to consider at the next meetings, so that you have that by your time you're making that final vote in June.
May I add a corollary to Ms. Upchurch's request? Because it's something I've been asking for about 4 years also. We budget on a one-year basis, but really we work a continuum that's multi-years. And a lot of spent all 13 years in our system. We're fortunate in that regard. Probably more than a lot of school districts. We're a little less transient. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of things we do really transcend fiscal years, including the spends. They may be periodical. So for us to look at this at least on a 3-year basis with known things coming up that are significant, leases to buses, for example, expiring, certain major capital expenditures for building maintenance that is just time so that we don't get ourselves in an emergency situation, et cetera, et cetera. Those kind of things would be nice to have a simple data table like this that had next fiscal year, the one after that, and the one after that, so that we could at least have this in front of us as we move forward, because we really don't operate on a one-year basis. We operate on a multi-year basis.
The audio enhancement is a perfect example. We're about to vote tonight on going into the second phase for that, for Prairie Winds, Palmer Ridge High School, and Kilmer. So that we know that's multiple phased project of multiple years.
Yeah.
No, exactly to your point, in Fund 43 is where we do take care of our capital improvement and maintenance projects. And so we already had that conversation in terms of what is coming on the slate for the 24-25 year. But Melissa over there is putting together that big list of that multi-year. Right. So we know it's coming in 25, 26, and 26, 27. And we're having, some of the conversations we're having in some of our information is a little bit more anecdotal, but we are getting it together so that we can put it down so that we know that, yes, we've got a Chromebook bubble coming in the 26, 27 year. And so are we going to be able to replace that? Well, yeah, we're kind of lining ourselves up so we'll be able to do that. But I wanted to be able to demonstrate that more objectively and thoroughly for you in the future.
Okay. Thank you. And I think this is an important conversation because, again, as our board members gel together with new board members, and voting on our budget is one of the most important things that we do as a board. Outside of this year, one of our other most important things was voting on our new incoming superintendent, Dr. Dattery, which is also with us tonight, by the way. I didn't say that earlier, but this is one of our primary roles that we do as a Board of Education. So, and having that information is key.
It's really helpful, and when you first sent it out, I looked at it and I thought, I don't even know what questions to ask. But now I'm yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You may have to make videos for us when you send out emails.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
Ms. Upchurch, I'd like to make a motion to approve non-academic student fees for school year 2024-2025, including athletic and transportation fees as presented.
I'll second that.
Discussion. Mr. Brown?
Oh, we just did.
Oh.
I was just getting for the vote.
Oh, okay. No discussion. We're ready to vote.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Dr. Shank?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye. Thank you so much, Mr. Ridgway.
You're welcome.
And number 7, C7 is yours as well, although I feel like we covered all that already. Is there anything else that stands out that you want us to
So yeah, there's just one thing I want to demonstrate on here, and I'll go at the very bottom of the monthly financial reporting package is the operations project, and part of that is this document that just details what is our strategy when it comes to the capital program.
What page is that?
It's on page 110 of 113.
Okay, thank you.
And basically what's happening in the individual funds, right? And so, you know, there are really capital items that happen in Fund 10. Those are very small, discretionary in terms of the building leader, the department leader, or whatever. As I'll say here, it's a lot of want to spends versus some capital maintenance items versus some capital improvement items. And Fund 43 is that big part of capital improvement items. The Fund 15 is where we isolate things like the payments we make for bus leases or that we make for the energy improvement project. It's where we started the project this year for the audio enhancement. The audio enhancement is moving into Fund 43 for next year. But the fund I wanted to really bring to your attention is Fund 44. We don't ever talk about Fund 44 very much, and it's what I call the capacity fund. And the revenue that comes into there comes from developers. It's fee in lieu of land in general is the big thing there. And these are projects that have high visibility to the board and the community, planned well in advance, etc. And this is where, when we are going to consider, if we're going to consider CTE building project, it's going to be coming through this fund. And this fund does have money in it already. And that would be the main point I wanted to share, was to look at that fund and see what money is now being accumulated in there. And so we go to our top page at the very front, and over here on the right, we'll look at the fund balance for it, and we'll see that we've got $2 million, a little over $2 million. So the 24-23 actual year-to-date, $2.1 million in that fund for capacity projects. And so when we talk about the impact of 24-017 and the fact of it being one-time money and being really designed, kind of almost defined to be properly used on a capital type of project, it would marry up with this money potentially and then provide an overall project budget for that, well north of $10 million then. So that's, and it's also where if we are to be pursuing this, is where initial expenses like earnest money, like payments to architects and things like that, they would be coming out of this. So it would not be using general fund money. It would be using fee in lieu of land money that, again, is basically designed for this purpose. So that was my one thing I wanted to highlight on the actual reporting through April.
That's actually really valuable to point out.
Good.
This time last year, maybe time's running, maybe I'm getting older and time is running together. You had put together priorities of making sure when we're talking about our different funds, of them being in their buckets, to make it more comprehensive and understandable. I don't know if that's the right word, but more understandable for us laymen's to understand where those dollars go. And so I also want to say thank you for that, because when you say that, I can go straight to it and I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Good. You're welcome.
Any other questions or thoughts or discussion on this part of our agenda on what Mr. Ridgway just pointed out? or anything else in this one? I'm going to say that the answer is no.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving along to C8, approval of consent agenda.
Ms. Upchurch, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Okay, let's take a vote.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Dr. Shank?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye. Thank you. Okay, very quickly, we're going to do E1, future meetings. This is the opportunity where we as a board, if there's anything we need to see, we have the executive, we have a couple things coming up for our June 4th work session and our June 17th regular meeting. Ms. Wetstein, is there anything you want to point out to us that stands out that we need to know about?
I'm happy to let you know that Miss Amy Atwood is available to join us for the work session on June 4th, and so she'll be giving a summary of not only the Senate Bill 2417, but also a summary of all the work that she has done on our behalf this year. We will also be planning to initiate a discussion on some minor contract revisions with Monument Academy, as well as give you an update on our process for reviewing the new charter school application.
Any other requests or thoughts that we'd like to see on an upcoming June agendas? You're staring at me, Mr. Schwartz. You're making me uncomfortable. Something I would like us to talk about, Ms. Wetstein, for our work session also is some cadence that, some normalization in our board meetings of want to make sure we have more, making sure that we're making the most of our time and the efficiency. And then another request was during superintendent updates, perhaps an update of upcoming events that we board members can make sure we have on our calendars.
Yes. Yes, please.
It's a good suggestion.
Okay, and as always, feel free to email any thoughts, questions, suggestions. Okay, let's move on. We have an executive session, F1. Would you like to make the motion, sir?
Ms. Upchurch, I'd like to make a motion to convene an executive session to discuss the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of any real, personal, or other property interest in accordance with CRS 24-6-402, paragraph 4A.
You have to do the rest. All of it.
The board will invite Amber Wetstein, Brett Widgway, and Melissa Andrews, along with incoming Superintendent Dr. Stacy Dattery, to join them in executive session in the superintendent's office. No further business will be discussed following this executive session, and the meeting will be adjourned.
Second.
Any discussion on the item? No, all right, we'll take the vote.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Dr. Shank?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye, and just to remind everyone, we will adjourn from executive session and not come back in.